Can you hear me?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and let me know if I sound good. Well, as good as I can sound, so try to keep things realistic.
Sound and video is okay.
Hey, so Friday, and a Good Friday. Not the official Good Friday, but a Good Friday nonetheless. A lot of stuff to talk about, actually, and all of it is good, like really good. So, first and foremost, I think the question on a lot of your folks' mind, besides when's beta, which will be number one, I think, until obviously we get into beta, are we going to have tests this weekend? So, we're hoping actually to have 3 tests this weekend. 3. First will be a hatchery test. Now, we usually leave the hatchery open for IT, depending on what else happens or what happens in the next 2.5 hours. we may leave that open for alphas as well. On fledgling, we are currently running an impromptu test for our alpha and IT guys. So if you haven't seen the email or if you've ignored the email, go on in. If that checks out over the next 2 hours, that test will be open all weekend for the alpha folks. We also hopefully on prep, Wormling prep, or Wormling, I think it will be prep, we may have the VFX island up as well. So as to the goals for all those tests, hatchery, latest and greatest build, we're checking in we've already checked in something that is, as the engineer who was talking about it said, it could work this time. It's been a few times that we've tried to get it in and get it working properly. It's tricky code, like really tricky. So hopefully this time. So we'll see what happens there. There will be some other things I think as well, but I don't know exactly what they are yet. Again, on fledgling, or I should say on Wormling or Wormling prep, the VFX island. So for that test, just as you guys and some of you new backers who haven't been in yet, if you want to see the now second pass at an improved VFX system, you can go in and take a look. What's there is just for the test. No, that doesn't reflect exactly how an island will look like, even for the TDT, but it's meant to see and test performance on people's cards. So especially if you're running an older card or you're running an AMD versus NVIDIA, please let us know how things are going. Good and bad. The tests so far have been outstanding. We've had some really, really good numbers coming out of that test, and we only expect it to get better as not only we continue to work on this version of the VFX system, but as I've said in other updates, this is only the first step to the final system, which will even be more powerful and faster. Don't worry, that improved system will not hold up beta. This is the system we are most likely going to go into beta with. If we had some spare cycles and could update it even further than what we planned for beta, sure, we might do that, but we're not going to let this hold up beta. What we will have in there, probably by the end of the month, will be more than powerful enough to get us into beta 1. For fledgling, we have a combination test. We have building, yay. We have building destruction, even better. And we have a crafter UI. We talked about this last week, and Me Huge's UI, thank you, Me Huge, thank you very much, is currently in, and people have been testing it for the last week, and this will be, hopefully, the first large-scale test of the placeholder crafting UI. Now, again, this is only a placeholder. This is the first pass at it, and it is there to make your lives easier.
Me Huge says you're welcome.
Because it is so much better than slash commands. So again, we thank you, Me Huge. It is great that so far it seems to be working as intended. So it's all good. There's some other things in the notes, lots of things in the testing notes that I won't spend time on now. But yeah, we're looking really good right now for 2, if not 3, tests over the weekend. And how's that, folks? I mean, obviously we're late, and there's no denying it, and we don't even try to, quite frankly. We embrace it, because you got to embrace the truth, good and bad. Either that or you're not being honest with folks such as yourselves. So yes, we're late. On the other hand, look at what you guys are getting access to. We are running tests constantly. We are improving the game constantly. And just as I promised you, as we added new programmers and as we added new gameplay programmers for the first time, just guys and gals focused on gameplay, look at how much more quickly things are moving along. More than a year ago, when we were in alpha and we were marching, we thought, towards beta, the build was really starting to feel like a game. You could run around, cast spells, you could do things that were actually very game-like. And the game hasn't felt like that in a year. We know that. Once we blew up the ability system, and I don't mean blew it up, I mean we blew it up, and then we took the ashes, and then we scattered the ashes, and then we blew up the world that was scattered, that the ashes were scattered on. That's what we ended up doing. It's not what we hoped to do, but that's what we ended up doing. And now the result of that is finally being seen. And the whole system is built on expandability. It's built on the ability of you folks to create really cool abilities by Voltroning, Frankensteining, pick a word, your stuff together. And yeah, you can do that. And it feels good doing that. And using a similar system, we just added some effects to arrows, so that when you build an arrow ability out of components, you now have a V effect attached to it. Now, in the scheme of great, developments in the PC world, this is not one of them, but it's just another step. And it's a step that is important because it makes the build feel even more like a game. So, when you go in there, switch to nighttime, and after you build your abilities, and start firing, the arrows into the air. And you'll see the VFX attached. It's also a good way, not only because it looks cool, but help us test the system. Make sure it's working, the way we expect it to now. Not perfect. There are notes about that, like the archery animations aren't in yet, Andrew. Well, the animation components that, Andrew is building out for him. That code is not final yet, so it doesn't look particularly good. On the other hand, you fire arrows, and you fire arrows with effects, and you refill your ammo when you run out of arrows, and the arrow does the tracking things it's supposed to do or not do. So we are feeling like a game. You can go in there and watch other people build, and you can start to break down their buildings while they're building. All of that is what we've been waiting for. Obviously, an animation system that we can use moving forward, a VFX system that we can move going forward. The ability not only to build while you guys are playing the game, but also to destroy while you guys are playing the game. And ask yourselves this: how many games have real building stability like we have already? And this is, we're still in alpha. And yet you can go in, you can build plots, you can watch the buildings take, damage. You can watch the stability track work, and it's great. And it's only going to get better, way better from here. But these are the things you need for beta. And you can start to see, you can see not even just the barest foundations of them being in. There's a lot more than that in there. So, having said all that, let's get to the top 10. It's another good top 10, and I've covered some of the points already. First, building improvements. So yeah, that's kind of a big deal. Not just the simple, what I said simply, we can build and destroy things. That's not only complicated code, but we needed things like metrics in there. So Rob has spent a considerable amount of time putting metrics in and tracking it. We even have a television screen that's hooked up for him so he can watch all the data from the metric system, while his other 3 screens have other things on them. This is really good. We've gone from 50,000 buildings to 50,000 blocks to over 200,000 blocks on each plot while we're testing stability. Now, in the scheme of our large buildings, that's not obviously that's not a huge number. It's a start. Building stability is something that no other game really has done well. It's hard when you have to calculate only a few pieces because you're building something out of templates. That's not a big deal. It really isn't all that tough. On the other hand, when each building can be made up of over 200,000 individual blocks, and you have to calculate the destruction or the stability of each part of the wall or the building or of whatever the heck it is, that is a bit more complicated, which is why no other game does it the way we do it. And so to get to the point we are now was an important step. And I have no doubt, and neither does Rob, that we're going to be scaling this up significantly before beta. Siege engines. So yeah, that's taken a little longer, unfortunately, than we would have liked, but we're very close now. You can build abilities that you can attach or use with the siege engines. We were hoping for this week to have it in for testing. It'll be next week. We're very confident of where it is today, but not confident enough that I want to push it to you guys for a test over the weekend. But I see no reason, or we see no reason, why you folks won't be able to really start testing siege engines next week. Player damage improvements. So yeah, this code has kind of been in there and rotted a little bit since we had to do the whole rehabilitation thing. So that's going in. That's being improved or ripped out as we speak. The question is, if we know one gameplay programmer is working on crafting and another is building siege engines, I wonder who could be working on this stuff. Have to find out someday. Bot improvements. So yeah, that's another thing that we haven't been paying a lot of attention to since November. So over the last week, Mark has been working with the bots, who will soon be renamed because we're just getting too much confusion from people on what the heck a bot is. So we had a little vote among some of the guys who were working on it. We have a new name, and when we start our new testing for you guys to see, you will have we'll also talk about what their new name is. But the big deal is that the bots are starting to use the new abilities. And of course, once we attach the new abilities to the bots, they revealed some issues, which is exactly what we wanted them to do. So Mark has been tracking that down, and they're just doing their thing. So definitely not this week. Hopefully next week, you guys can see the bots running around firing arrows. And by the way, they were firing arrows at me just fine, like yesterday when we were testing it. So much so that I thought it was a player for a moment. That was embarrassing. The problem is we got too many bots all firing abilities, then something bad happened. So, we need to track that down. Item and equipment performance improvements. So yeah, that's all part of the, hey, as we add new things and we have additional programmers like Christina in this case, and we have bots, we find out things. And one of the, or a couple of the things we found out, she started working on and improving. So, I know I've said this before, but having these bots are going to be, is going to be one of the smartest things we've ever done. Demo purposes aside, which is certainly good, it's allowing us to beat on the system in ways we couldn't do before. Lord knows we couldn't do that back at Mythic, either with Warhammer or Dark Age of Camelot. I wish we could have. It would have made our life so much easier. These guys, these things, these wonderful creations are going to be so important to us, even as important they are now, as they have been in the past, as they are now, they will be even more important in the future. So I know this is one of those things that doesn't necessarily sound like a big deal, but it really is. You folks can't test 24/7, but for beta, one of the things I want us to do is have our own server set here with the bots running 24/7 and spamming abilities and building and destroying. Because if you want to stress test an engine, you can't rely on your backers to do it simply because they're human and they have lives and they don't, they kind of need sleep. The bots don't. On tech, ability affects targeting. So yeah, look, this is another thing that doesn't necessarily sound sexy, but it really is. Just like our ability system, which is craftable by you folks, we wanted a system set up for VFX and SFX that could work in a similar manner. That would be very easy for Ben or other people to simply attach these things and once again Voltron them together. So Gabe has been working on that, and it's really sexy stuff. It's going to make it so much easier to create not only the system that we wanted or needed for the ability system, but something that's just cool. So you guys will be seeing, you're actually seeing the results of that now or will be on today's test, or if you're on Hatchery, on that version. Polearms. So yeah, Sandra's got in the hopefully the final pass or before some tweaking, good enough for testing of polearms. Polearms are a pain in the ass to animate properly, and she's done a pretty good job with it. So I hope you folks like it. UI pass, as we continue to iterate on the UI, and as I've said on the forums and as I've said here, please don't panic. We are just going through version after version, tweaking things, trying to get the right feel for beta, and then if it doesn't work, we'll go to something else. Resource node concept art. So yeah, if you've been in the game, you've seen the first pass at what looks like an entrance to a mine, and all of those things, whether it's for ore, whether it's for materials, that other materials is what we're going to use for the opening of Beta 1. It is not, I promise you, what we're going to have for the game when it goes live. That's the bubble system. But look, we wanted something that looked nice for you folks, so it actually felt at least more like what the bubble will feel like when you're in the mine. So you've got to pass at that. We had another pass at helmet materials. So John and Michelle have been working on that. That was done. Realm-specific torches. So John has been working on that for the game. You've seen, obviously, the concept passes of them so far. We think they look great. They will, I have no doubt, look fabulous when they're inside the game. And I can't wait to see them. I know it's one of these things that also doesn't seem like a big deal. But again, it's, a little bit of polish, a little bit of extra work for you guys, because, it's worth it. And it just does look cool. So last up, dock assets. So yeah, one of the things we wanted for the opening of Beta 1 is just to make the landing areas and the bits on the island actually feel more like a game. So, grab some quick assets from, one of the usual places and modify them and are putting them in the game. It's a first pass, and no, we're not going to charge you for each one we put in. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, so that they're going to go in. We're going to do that a lot, especially with placeholder assets, because there's no reason not to, as long as those don't represent the final assets for the game. But to get it in now and to just make things feel ever more like a game week after week, that's what we're trying for. And if you look at the last month of updates, we've certainly been getting there. So that's it on the top 10-ish. Programming note, 2 of them. First, we are going to be changing the format of our user stories and updates. Doing the twice a month user stories was just starting to take too much time. So we want to cut back. Those will only be on the once a month. We will continue to do the top 10-ish, and we'll alternate them so it works out so you folks won't be deprived of information. But at this point, as we want to focus as much as the programmer's time and Tyler's time and the artist's time on actually getting into beta, continually updating the user stories on the basis we were, was just taking up, not a crazy amount of time, but at this point, every hour certainly helps. We've tried very hard not to go into crunch. We certainly have, not done the Death March to Bataan thing that other studios have done. So if we can save a little time and give you guys still the big update that you want, which is certainly the user stories to show you everything we've been working on, we're going to do that. We just won't do it every 2 weeks like we're doing it now. So I think that's going to work out very well. Certainly will save us time, which is great. And again, every hour that we can save, especially when it goes across disciplines like this one does, is going to get us into beta faster. Yeah, that's going to change. Again, starting next week. I said there were two, didn't I?
To what?
2 programming notes.
Yes.
Damn, I forgot what the second one was. I just John McCain'd.
Wow.
Sorry.
Were you going to hint at
God, now I've forgotten.
who was working on something?
No.
Okay.
God, what was the other programming note? Warning, you have entered the
Maybe
Twilight
Tyler
Zone.
knows?
No, he has no idea.
Tyler
Neither do
doesn't
I.
know either.
Yeah, what the heck was the other programming note? Yes, I got it. Thank you. So because today, yeah, brain just went that way. So for today, since it's now 4:20, but since it's not a user story day and I've got a bunch of other things done, I can actually let this Q&A run longer than usual. So let's start with the questions.
All right, start writing up your questions, and we'll play the Q&A intro.
Who are you?
Turn the stove off. Did I hear a suck?
Do you like my shirt?
When are this?
Is this my spleen?
Now it is time to answer some questions.
All right, here we go. Odilvik asks, will bots evolve into NPC guards one day? Or will the guard AI be totally new AI? Or 3 unique guard AIs, one for each realm?
Great question. Really good question. Thanks for starting us off with that. Bots are not NPCs. That's something that is so important to understand. The distinction between them is really simple. Bots are players. We've said this right from the beginning. NPCs, if we were doing the NPC testing that some other games do, in our case, it would be a bit of a cheat. We'd be saying, hey, we're testing bots, and this shows the kind of performance you can expect from our game. Yeah, not so much. Because if you're running them as traditional NPCs, it means running off the same server. You're running, certainly not the same way that a player would interact with the game, meaning you're connected, so you're burning bandwidth. You're connected remotely, so you're sending packets, you're doing all the things that you need to do, versus, hey, I've just got this NPC in the code and I'm activating it. So look at all the NPCs on the screen. Yeah, no. Our bots are bots, and NPCs will be different.
GMMG93 asks, will it be possible for commanders or guild leaders to give specific directions to their large groups at a level of detail that's more than just defend this spot, attack this, i.e. certain formations that combatant groups can be in, etc.? If so, will that also mean that commanders or guild leaders will have the ability to play their roles that in a way that is somewhat similar to what an RTS looks like, if they so choose?
That'd be lovely. Certainly, we had formations in March on Oz, and I love the idea. It's not an original idea for these kind of games, but I would love to be able to do something like that down the road. No promises. I know I can't imagine JB wouldn't be excited about that, but that would be something that for now we have not planned on.
RahelDan asks, I know there won't be mounts in CU, but what about gliders?
I wish. Look, I am a total fanboy of flying. I've loved it. I love mounts. I wanted them for Dark Age, as you folks know. But no, for now, certainly not gliders. Not at least in a truly usable way. If we wanted to put gliders on rails, well, certainly we could do that, because then that's just a faster form of transport. Sort of like obviously Dark Age and the horse routes. But in terms of any ability to really glide, no. And by the way, that's not an engine limitation. Certainly one of the issues we had back at Mythic with the first iteration of the Dark Age engine was that we really couldn't do anything like that. Same problem with Blizzard had with WoW, why they couldn't add, their flying mounts to certain areas of the game. Same with us. Same with us at Mythic. Right now, the only thing that would hold us back would be simply the time to do it. And while I would love it, and maybe one day it could make an appearance for special areas, nothing for launch, certainly.
Quite sure I understand Casper's question, but maybe you will. Will there be a Landon's test, similar to the fall test you recently had? Landon?
I know what that is, and I'm blanking.
Capital L?
Oh, now I feel sheepish.
Give us a hint, Casper.
I should remember that. I've forgotten what it is.
All right. Krakatoa Crazy Crafter asks if Beta 1 can test this weekend then.
Not this weekend, hopefully next week. If we get through this, I think we're in good enough shape to finally give the Beta 1 something to cheer about. I've been holding off on that, mainly because of the animations, but we'll see where we are next week. There's enough to show them, and I think we can show them in a good way. Keep your fingers crossed.
Casper clarifies landing. A landing test.
I thought there was something called a landing test that somebody once asked about. Okay, then I don't feel so sheepish. A landing test, if you mean the idea of trying to get everybody in at one time, or of the landing areas, depending on how you're using the word, yeah, we want to do both.
It's like a ISEE practice test company.
Yeah, see, there was something. I knew there was.
There was a connection.
I knew there was a connection. I just couldn't place it.
All right. On to the next question?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Justin asks, how do the folks at City State deal with negativity from random people on the internet? Is it a matter of growing thick skin over time, or simply not listening to naysayers belittling your baby?
I want to be careful about this because, sometimes hate on the internet can be truly upsetting. And I don't want to dismiss it totally by just saying grow a thick skin, because there are some people on the internet, certainly there are even some backers, who've said some truly awful things, reprehensible things, despicable things. Look, for the studio as a whole, yes, sometimes it can upset people here. And sometimes even it can upset me. And I'm supposed to be the guy with the thick skin after doing this all the time. Though I think if you're going to take a real life example, people who get stung by bees multiple times don't get an immunity. They just get sicker as they, keep getting stung more. The best thing we can do is just keep doing what we're doing. We know what we're making here. We have a pretty good idea that our backers also know what we're making here. Sometimes hatred and naysayers are former backers who just want to, F with us. Sometimes they're people from other games who want to certainly say bad things about us. Sometimes they're even sent by other companies to badmouth your game. This happens in the game industry. It happened to us during the Dark Age days. So, kind of used to it. For every jackass we see on the internet, we have backers who do nice things for us. And I don't mean buy us things, just send us nice, pieces of encouragement, nice letters, nice, little things. It doesn't have to involve money. And that makes us feel better. Today was refund day for me. I finally found the hours to just, sit down and get things done. And, as I'm going through, an occasional whining one came up. But at the same point, a very nice backer, or a nice backer, said a very nice letter to me, talking about, how happy he was with the game and the development, and that, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. And in the end, people will, be proven wrong. And that's all that we can continue to do. we're always going to be transparent. We're always going to be out there. We're always going to take the slings and arrows and occasional catapults from other people. That's who the studio is. That's who I am. I've never hidden behind just a name or a jolly pirate nickname, as I used to say. That I've always been there. And I can't imagine that I'm going to change anytime soon. Do I wish people were a little nicer? Sure, but I wish the world was a nicer place without getting too deeply into politics. We need a little less negativity in the world, and I'm not saying we should all get around a campfire and sing Kumbaya and roast marshmallows, but there's no need for some of the hatred, and I don't mean about games, but just in general, that people like to sling around the internet. But look, this is no different than anything I've experienced since I started, my first gaming system. Once people have the ability to be anonymous or semi-anonymous, they start saying things that they probably shouldn't and wish they hadn't once they get caught. But, that's how it is. That's how it's always been. I just hope it always isn't this way. Because the Lord knows I felt so angry at certain other game developers over the decades, but I kept my mouth shut, and sometimes it's better if other people would as well. But thanks for the question.
Kaladex asks, since there are so many islands, how much time do you expect players to spend on sea travel versus land travel?
A reasonable amount of time, depending on now. Let me actually take a step back first. So keep in mind that while there are going to be a ton of islands, the idea is to bring more of them together. So as islands get closer and closer together, then you're going to start spending obviously less time on sea travel. It's one of the reasons, encouragements, incentives, that you should go out and take these places and bring them closer to home. It's all sort of advantageous to you. So, at first, sea travel is certainly going to be used to slow down the ability of folks to zerg. I mean, that's always has always been one of the ideas that we've had for preventing the kind of, hey, let's just go round robin across the world and not do anything, except take empty keeps or do the keep trading or do other things. So, having sea travel, having things that are put there intentionally, we're not hiding it, to slow down the possibility of that, there's going to be a part of the game, right from the beginning. And it will morph into other things as we go forward as well.
There's been several questions about radar or lagdar, as there was in Daok. From Medic and Daok, there was lagdar that let you know a large force of enemies were in the area, presumably due to your computer loading.
I got it. Yeah, I saw that on the forums. No, not so much. That is something that we've talked about. Is something that, look, there would be no excuse for us putting out the information that would allow radar to function the way it did in Dark Age or other games. We planned on this right from the beginning. In terms of lagdar, certainly we hope that won't be an issue. It's part of what we're doing every week, every month, trying to build a system that can handle large-scale battles. And if there's no, significant lag in those large-scale battles, there won't be significant lag while you approach the large-scale battles either.
Gwalch asks, are there any other classes you plan to include in the beta? Has the number changed?
As of now, no. Could it change? Small chance, not a very large chance. We hope it doesn't change, frankly. If it changes, it probably means we had a little extra time on our hands, and I'd prefer that not to happen.
Francis Baudelaud asks, with all the attention put on creating nice armors and weapons, is there anything planned in CU that will allow people to examine items more closely, like a display?
Yeah, hey Francis. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Things like, obviously, we've talked about the maker's mark. Things that, kind of important to crafters as well as important to players who will be buying the items. Absolutely. No doubt.
Let's see. Also wants to know why no mounts.
Well, so far, don't forget, even though some people think that I've said, there will never be mounts in CU, I've never said that. I've always said the same thing of, we have no plans to put in mounts right now. We have no secret plans to put in mounts. The only thing I've ever said about mounts is that there'll be two kinds. One, the kind that you use for a caravan, and the second kind, to be determined. If we were going to have mounts, the absolutely bottom line is they won't be as fast as the speed classes can make you go. We've been very clear from the beginning that having a class that can have the ability, that does have the ability to speed up a party's travel is important to the game. So we're going to have that. Would I like to have mounts? The overarching thing, always the overarching thing, is engine performance. And, certainly as the game's engine improves and as the video cards that the vast majority of our players have improve, could we think about it again? Sure. I'm always thinking about it because, like I said, I like mounts. But, you didn't buy this, you didn't donate to this game. I wish I could say you bought this game because that way I wouldn't have to give refunds. Yeah, you bought it, sorry. But you've donated, and so I'm sticking to the plan. But nothing is more important than the thing that you did donate to this game for, and that is to create large-scale battles. And adding mounts obviously complicates the matter. So until we can deliver on that first and foremost of all the founding principles we have, then talking about mounts in any significant way would, be too close to the idea of, hey, look, bright, shiny, give us some more money. So, sorry. I do like them, though, very much.
Just Tan asks, what is the single most important lesson you've learned up to this point in the development process of CU?
Never expect you can convince anybody to move to Virginia. I am absolutely not being facetious with that one. It is the single biggest lesson that I've learned. We paid a price for it. We have. We thought, Andrew and I were convinced that we'd be able to recruit enough engineers to make this game. And we were wrong. We were absolutely wrong. We had a backup plan, and we started obviously hiring people remotely. But even that wasn't easy because finding the right remote person is tough. It's really tough. So yeah, that is absolutely the single negative lesson that I've learned from the development. On the other hand, on the positive side, it's more like a reinforcement of a lesson, and that is just be transparent. We have tried, whenever possible, beyond the norm for game developers, to be transparent with all of you folks. Sometimes it's bit us in the ass, I have no doubt. We have some additional refunds or complaining or disappointment, because we have been so honest. Because I'm not standing here, or sitting here with sunglasses and, trying to hype the game or hiding things from you folks so you won't be nervous. We just haven't done that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to ever do it. So I think those are two pretty good lessons that have been drilled into my brain even more than I expected, especially with the first one.
For the record, I love Virginia.
I know, and see, and this is the thing. To all those guys in Seattle, who think Seattle's so great, I'm not gonna hate on Seattle because it's not worth hating on. It's not bad, but man, oh man, Virginia has just got so many things going for it. It is so pretty. It's got all the amenities you want. It's got fabulous wine country for those who drink wine, or DC, which is also a wine country these days apparently. Get the joke? I hope so. Wine, WHINE, just explaining for those who might not get it. But it's got so much to offer, and at the end of the day, we're within range of any bomb that goes off, nuclear, atomic, or future that hits DC. So we're right there. So we'll see it all firsthand for about 20 seconds.
Way to sell it, Mark.
Yeah, I know. Is that great? I always take the absolutely the most positive spin you could put on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fox Flares asks, will there be a type of ranked arena PvP?
This is something that players have talked about for a while. Sometimes they ask for it. Sometimes they hint at it. Sometimes I've even talked about some kind of games. We'll see. It's something that I want to be very careful with. And this is something I've said before. We don't want... we're spending a lot of time trying to create, just like in Dark Age, the sense of everyone in your realm is your friend. That's how I sold the concept, as you folks who were there from the beginning know, of RVR versus, open PvP or factionless PvP. And so anything that could really hurt that kind of bonding is a bad thing. So, we'll see.
Destroyer asks, will there be any passive skill training or passive crafting like in EVE Online?
Yeah, not surprising. That's being asked a lot. Certainly EVE, and I think Crowfall is doing something similar. Not a big fan for this game. Not in that sort of way. Could the Vox be left out to do things? Yes, we have talked about that. But remember, that means the Vox can also be then taken or destroyed. So it wouldn't be passive in that manner. So it's something that we're thinking about, we've talked about, but the idea that your character itself truly trains while you're out, no, that really doesn't fit our game.
Brittany's saying they were all standing around the office, around the TV, laughing about the Seattle comments. Koki
Virginia's
asks,
great,
yeah,
and it's sunny almost every day.
Koki asks, would crafters be able to build roads to give a speed boost?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We've talked about roads during the Kickstarter. I'm all for roads. I think, when you look at what we've said about no instant travel, at least no important instant travel, certainly could we use instant travel in the safe cities or things like that? Yeah, absolutely. Because then it doesn't affect gameplay. It doesn't affect RVR. Now, you can argue that, but you can walk faster from one place to another. But that's not a big deal. So one of the things we have said, absolutely, is that we want faster travel. If we want the ability to be able to go faster for various reasons. Obviously, speed classes is one of them. Roads that speed you up and can also be trapped by crafters so they have the opposite effect on other realms. Yeah, we'd love to do that. It's something that's been in my head forever.
Darrow 10 asks, will groups, zergs, etc. be able to be heard from a certain distance? For example, if 8 people are running near me, would I be able to hear them as opposed to hearing a zerg of, say, 50 people from further away?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we have on our list of things to do. Not for Beta 1.
Briar C asks, if the connections to the server are coming in too fast, causing instability, will you have a queue system connecting to the server, or is it the plan to have the server support mass connections at the same time? I was never fond of queues when the server isn't full.
Yeah, we want mass connections. It's one of the reasons we have the bots. When we've run tests up to, 2,000 or more, those guys are all coming in, they're going out, they're firing off abilities, they're stress testing the system. So yeah, that's absolutely one of the things we really want to have. And that's why we're spending time on the bots. That's why we'll continue to spend time on the bots. This is something that is so barely in its infancy for us that we expect great things from them. No pressure, Mark.
F2 the Low asks, will there be an EU server for Beta 1 or just NA?
We're going to do both. Don't forget the beta servers won't run 24/7. That's not what we certainly promised, and certainly not like most games that have true betas. And I don't mean the fake betas where the game is done, where they just want to get as much money out from you as possible before they then make changes and take the game live. But yes, we absolutely want to have servers up in the EU. We want to have servers up in the US. It's a nice thing about cloud services. I wish we had this in the Dark Age days, that we can just spin up whatever we need when we need it. So we're planning on having servers up in different regions. We may run a server in a region where we don't even have a lot of people, just to see how it goes. It's really nice to be able to do that. So grateful that it is these days where you can do something like that.
My chat program skipped a few questions, so if your question isn't getting asked, circle back around and ask it again.
Oh, don't believe him. He's probably skipping some of your questions.
No. Thanks, Mark. Yeah,
You're welcome.
sabotage me, why don't you? Justin asks, would you ever consider implementing some sort of community self-policing system, i.e. public trials with judge and jury systems similar to ArcAge?
Yeah, that'd be great. Not going to happen in this game. Certainly not for launch. Don't have the time for something like that. I'm not very familiar with how things worked out with that in ArcAge. It certainly was an interesting idea. It goes back to some of the MUDs. So seeing, how it actually worked out for them would be information that'd be useful. I need to ask him. I could just ask him.
Briar C asks, rather than running boats between islands automatically built by CSE, is it in the plan to have the player crafters to build said ships and charge for travel? Different ships built at different sizes, speeds, etc.
We've talked about that. That's something I'd love to do. It's not something I thought we could do for beta. Certainly not any stage of beta, but maybe afterwards. Or if we had additional programmers, maybe. I think something like that would be cool. I think that would add, another layer of things to do. I know there are certain people, within our backer community who are already interested in being caravan haulers. So having a component that is either ship-based or, fantastic mount-based would be interesting to do.
Fang Bain asks, when will Cube get props like chairs and tables to play with?
Yeah, Cube has been under... God, it's just been unloved.
Lying fallow.
Lying fallow, thank you, for a while. I promise you folks we were not going to spend time on Cube other than what we absolutely needed for Unchained until we got into beta. So, yeah, I wish I could promise anything. I just can't. I'm not going to break the promise about, Unchained versus Cube. But, having said that, once we get into beta, Cube is going to get a lot of loving from us. It needs it. It needs it for CU. It needs it for itself. I can't devote the resources. I can't justify any delay in getting into beta to help Cube unless it's part of what we need for the beta version of Unchained.
Odilvik asks, there are often Easter eggs in games. As someone in the industry, are these Easter eggs normally planned and designed, or a rogue programmer with a mischievous streak working alone?
No, usually planned. Sometimes the programmers can do something on their own. That's generally not a good idea. Bad things can happen with that. I'm a big believer in them. Certainly, I wanted a bunch for Warhammer. I would like a bunch here as well, but once again, just lack of time.
Kaladex asks, if sea travel will be relatively time-consuming to slow people down from getting to island, what will people be able to do while at sea?
Well, I don't know if there are a couple routes to go with this. You could go, more similar to WoW or SOE, where you had to wait for the mounts. You had to wait for the boat to arrive. But we'll see. Certainly, it's not going to be instant. Yes, it's going to, again, be used to slow things down. Personally, I would love it to take longer at sea, as long as you could do stuff from there. I think that'd be really cool. I think it feels more immersive than simply sitting on a dock for 10 minutes waiting for the boat to show, and then you go instant travel, essentially. I just don't know what we'd get in time for beta, certainly. Beta 1. I think that having a true ship system, or sea travel, let's just call it that's probably better, where you can do things where things could happen, I think that's far more interesting. But it also takes more resources.
Donnie and others suggest we play Gauntlet of Death on boats. Foxflares asks, if there aren't arenas, in what ways, PvP-wise, will you be able to distinguish yourself as an individual?
Oh, by how many of the enemies you kill and how many of their women you drive before them. What's that quote?
What is best
Hear the
in
lamentations.
life?
No, yeah.
Hear the lamentations of their
Hear the
women.
lamentations. Drive your enemies before you and hear the lamentations of their
See your
women.
enemies driven before
Before
you.
you.
Crush your enemies.
No.
Crush your foes, something like that.
Wow. See,
this
he
is
can't remember the
embarrassing.
Conan quote either. But yes, it's what you do. I mean, look, it's an RVR game. It's everything that you do out there hopefully everything, will result in things that will allow you to show everybody how good you are. So whether it's stuff you get for your house, stuff you can wear, stuff that you get to use. You don't want to say it's all about the EPeen, because it really isn't. But it is about being rewarded for what you do and being able to show it. I think I used a phrase in the past of keeping up with the Gandalfs. In our game not being a gear grind, and so that hasn't changed at all. But as you succeed in RVR, as you help your realm, whether it's on the field of battle or as a crafter with your Vox, you'll get things that other people won't get to show off that success. These things you can't buy. Doesn't matter how much gold you buy from a gold seller. It's irrelevant. It's only stuff that you can earn. And so we want to have a lot of that in this game.
Abducted Gaming asks, do you have a target maximum keep size or block amount that you want to aim for with player-built keeps? How big would you consider to be bigger than practical?
I want to go as big as Rob says we can go, honestly. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do with stability, this isn't easy. This is something that nobody else does. Making blocks fall down when you have a few of them, it's not a big deal. Making blocks fall down where truly stability doesn't matter, that's also not a big deal. Trying to make 1,000,000 blocks fall down with stability, so if you remove one block, that not everything collapses, or that damage is spread upon various blocks, therefore putting additional strain on the blocks where you're actually checking the material, you're seeing how resistant it is to such things. That's not easy. So, look, we're going to reach a number. What is that number? We don't know yet. There are things that we're doing to give us and give you folks ever more blocks within a building, but look, only time will tell. I'm pretty confident that we'll have a big enough number that you folks will be happy with it. I really am.
Arcane Cloister asks, will the siege weapon ammo, once fired, be affected by the air system?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, the whole system is built around the concept of projectiles. And it doesn't matter whether it's a siege projectile, an ability projectile, because they're all, at the end of the day, just abilities. So yes, once it goes up, it is as vulnerable as anything else. Whether it's a spell that comes from a player, whether it's an arrow that comes from a bow, or whether it's something that comes off a catapult.
Spike Druid asks, what's your favorite D&D class?
I've always been kind of magey. I've, never been a great cleric. None of my characters, if I go back to the old white box set, never really good at any kind of clerical class. I was much better at blowing up people. Pretty good at it, too, in the day. Only died, I think it was once, in one campaign. And I played a lot of campaigns. Used to drive DMs crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Town ZZ asks, not that the office has time, but are there any games exciting everyone in the office?
Oh yeah, people play different games. Sometimes they play new games, and they play some of their old favorites. Honestly, it depends. I mean, we've had, everything from old school RuneQuest to Rust to Ark, all sorts of things. Factorio, some of the guys are playing now. Really depends on who you talk to. It's people have obviously different opinions, and we've got a pretty good group of gamers here, and cross all sorts of boundaries in terms of who plays what.
You're going to like this question. Leveline asks, I'd really love to do realm stuff, but I must admit I'm a crafter by heart. Yet, I want to have a scout-type secondary character. Can I use that character to help my crafter, or do I have to use my crafter?
Well, no, of course you could use a scout. The part of being a crafter certainly is taking some risk, at least if you're trying to go out in the wilderness. So if you used your scout to help scout out an area, and then you brought your crafter along afterwards, sure, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not cheating in any way. So yeah, I absolutely expect that you can do that. No reason why you couldn't.
Casper asks, will we have to harvest trees for wood building mats, or will we have to buy it from NPCs?
Oh no, you'll be cutting down trees. That's absolutely part of the game. Wait, hang on.
Go ahead.
But obviously not during the beginning of Beta 1. That's why the nodes are there.
Odovic asks, will players embark and disembark boats from fixed points on islands, or will they be able to land their boats anywhere?
Version 1 is certainly the equivalent of the horse routes. You can go from one place to another. Down the road, certainly I want some control, because that kind of control allows you to do more interesting things. So expect version 1, yeah, this is just set. Expect during beta to have some say over where it goes.
Spike Druid asks, could the bounty system be repurposed for a player-led insurance system that is game-enforced?
Need more details before I answer that question? Good question, though.
All right. I'll keep an eye for that, Spike. Dreege L asks, with the Vox, players will be able to craft anything from it. I was imagining player-built cities full of life and buildings. What will become of forges, blacksmiths, tailoring, board, workbench, etc.? Are we doomed to build those things just for an aesthetical purpose?
So in terms of the cities feeling like cities, certainly it would be nice to have forges and all that stuff there, because that is immersive. The trouble is that doesn't fit our world. At least it doesn't fit what we're building. The idea of the Vox was to replace those things, a lot of those things. Now, keep in mind that things such as tailoring or cooking or other skills that professions or hobbies you see in other games, we haven't talked about, certainly for this game. But things that the Vox does, that, putting in a lot of fake, because that would be kind of fake, things to give the city life, it's not something we should really do. I think it's up to us to find some other creative ways to make the cities feel more immersive.
Koki asks, as a follow-up on the road building and traps, would terrain be able to be adjusted? For example, making a certain area a swamp by redirecting water in that direction.
Yep, that's exactly what we've talked about. We'll see. The beauty of the system that Andrew, created was that, this stuff can change on the fly. So that is something we have talked about. It is something I think is necessary for us. How far we can go with it, that's a time will tell thing.
Lev Viline asks, I have watched these very fantastic cube creations. Is there a way for any new player to try it all out without being laughed at?
Well, yeah, you're doing it privately. Why would anyone laugh at you? Yeah, this is not, when you build these cube creations, you're building them in single player mode. We haven't turned on, multiplayer building mode yet for that game. So you wouldn't be laughed at simply because you would not be showing anyone. And in terms of showing things on the forums, people have been very supportive of any backer who's willing to spend the time to create some of the kind of structures that guys, like Necro and Swazi have built. Look, this isn't easy. The amount of time it takes them and the amount of effort it takes them is pretty special. But you can also create things very quickly in Cube. And with the blueprint system, it makes it even easier to build those kind of structures. So look, you get it with your donation to the game, depending on your level. I would say just have fun and, see what happens.
Justan asks, tech question. Are you actively considering or implementing solutions to reduce the latency of client-server communications?
Yeah, I mean, that's like kind of our focus from the beginning. That's like our thing. You can't get 1,000, let alone 2,000 people in a viewing frustrum in a massively multiplayer online game unless you have spent a ton of time on optimization of network traffic. So, yeah, you don't want to say that's a daily thing, but it's awfully close to that. Being able to do what we've already done, which is, if it's not better than any other game out there already, we're pretty darn close to that. And we're going to, I think, absolutely hit that point in the next couple months. So it is something we are so intensely focused on. Sometimes we don't pay as much attention to it because we're working on other things, but it is something that isn't going to shift in terms of its importance, because you can't. Because if you haven't optimized your network traffic, you just can't get the kind of load that we have been able to get on a player's screen. You can't. It's not possible. No matter how clever you think the solution, it still comes down to how much information you can push to a player in a certain amount of time. And you need that information. If you want to have a game where 1,000 people are right in front of you, essentially, and they're truly right in front of you, and they're people, not NPCs, you have to have figured things out in an awfully clever manner. That's what we've been focused on right from the get-go.
Odovic asks, given the sky takes up 50% of the viewable screen, will it get as much love as the land and trees?
It's going to get a lot of love. It's already gotten more love. It's going to get a lot more love going forward. It's actually one of my, don't want to call it pet peeves, but it's something that I think is kind of important. It's not important for now. It's definitely important when we're getting to polishing the game. It's something that I think some games have done pretty well, but we can do it a lot better, and I hope really hope we can deliver on that.
Scribe of Salmasis asks, will we see group PvP Virginia versus Seattle?
Yeah, we'd win that. I love the guys in Seattle, but we have a secret weapon here. We have Tim and JB, and based on what I know of these guys, and Mike's a hardcore Dayak player. Yeah, I think unless the programmers over there started putting stuff in their code like, if you see Tim, kill him. I think we'd be tough to beat. I think that we've got a pretty interesting group of PvPers here.
Fox Flares asks, is there fishing?
Not yet.
Let's see. All right. Adric Cortesia asks, what are the most important tasks you'd like to tackle in the beginning of Beta 1?
New tasks or old tasks? I'll let you answer, and I'll wait. I'll get you on the rebound.
All right. Gwolch asks, any thoughts on Ashes of Creation? Are you happy there's more competition on the market?
I am always for additional games. Well, almost always. Shouldn't say always because that would be a lie. I am almost always for other games. In terms of AOC or anyone else out there, as usual, I have absolutely nothing to say about a fellow developer.
All right. George had a comment about cube scaling, so I'll just read it off real quick.
Sure.
I was making this point to a couple members of the team yesterday. Cubic scaling is crazy. 500 blocks is 125 million. One of the reasons we get away with these big structures is that we optimize building geometry on the fly, simplify it into one polygon for a whole wall of blocks, etc. And for this reason, the complexity of the building is more important than the number of blocks. So there you have it. All right. Chris Hettinger asks, I am a software engineer from the Midwest. My experience is predominantly business applications. I've been reluctant to apply because we'll say it's confidence and no game industry experience, despite my personal dream of getting there. I'm just not sure if I can meet the core needs you have, or really what they are in particular. Can you give me, or us, any comment on what the baseline is?
Yeah, so the question with you would be, what you could actually do to help us. As you know, since you've been programming for a bit, it's not as simple as saying, hey, I'm a great programmer who's been working on business applications and therefore I can help you. You never know. On the other hand, there have been people who've, come here who weren't gameplay programmers who ended up actually being good at gameplay. So, at the end of the day, somebody like you, I think you should, if you're really interested, probably be taking a big pay cut, because the game industry doesn't always pay well. Send in your resume, and we'll interview you and then code test you, and maybe you'll surprise us. And by surprise, I don't mean because we're underestimating your ability, but surprise us in the sense of that we see more of an understanding of how you can help us in terms of a game programmer just versus a general programmer. So, you have nothing to lose. If you're interested, send a message to jobs@citystateentertainment.com and see what happens. We have absolutely interviewed people who've had no experience making games, which is why we do code tests and other things, because you don't have to necessarily have ever worked on an MMO to be a great MMO programmer. As a matter of fact, a whole bunch of our guys never worked on, as you might imagine, never worked on an MMO. But we saw enough with their work in games in general to go, hey, yeah, We definitely want you as part of the team. So, Chris, send in your resume and let's see what happens.
All right. Saccharix asks, can you explain, after all this time, what you want the body part system to bring over? Is it just complexity for the sake of it? What do you say about body part or wound system being dumbed down with way too much AoE healing, or abilities made to cleanse multiple wounds?
Look, I've said the same thing from the beginning, Saccharix, as you well know, that the whole point of the wound system was not, the body part system and the wound system was not to just add complexity for complexity's sake. I am not a fan of that. I've never been a fan of that. What I wanted to do, and this goes back to pre-Dark Age of Camelot, was create a system where body parts and spell locations back then, now it's just ability locations, actually had an impact. So you could focus, on a player like you would focus on, say, a spaceship, where you wish you could just damage the weapons. How many times do you see in movies, target their shields, or target their phaser banks, or do whatever? And that's what I was going for. It's what I've wanted to do for a long time. Is it going to work in this game? I have no idea. I've said that right from the beginning. We hope it does, and if it doesn't, I'll change it. As in terms of healing, again, we'll see. If we end up dumbing everything down because it's too complex, then we just remove the whole damn system. I don't care. If it can't work for this game, then it doesn't work for this game. I've said this so many times, and as you know, that it's not a matter of ego for me. I just don't care. If it's a great system, if it adds to the game's fun, if it allows players to, who play the game smarter, then, and there's an advantage to that, fantastic. If it's a matter of just spamming more buttons, then that's not something I'm a fan of. It's one of the reasons why we've made so many decisions we've already made with this game to stay away from, hey, I can just hit my buttons faster than you can, therefore I win. So, look, we'll see what happens. My opinion of that hasn't changed, from even before day one. We'll give it a shot, and if it doesn't work, we take it out.
Spike Druid has a clarification for their earlier question. Cool. Clarify, will the options available in bounties, success and failure payouts, be diverse enough that player-led insurance could potentially be available, i.e., bounty on a successful shipment if you take it and succeed. If you take it and succeed, you get the money, but if you take it and it fails, you pay the agreed upon failure penalty.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's exactly. I was hoping, that's why I asked you for more detail. Yes, that is something I would very much like to see. I think it's something that makes for a healthier system, as long, and here's the big thing, of course, as long as the players can't go, hey, I'm going to take, I'll take out this caravan for, 10,000 units, and if I fail, I still get 2,000 units, and they don't even try to do it. So we'd have to, prevent that. But if we can do it in the right way, sure, I'd like a very complex bounty system.
Justin has another tech question. What company did you choose to run the distributed cloud server technology for CU, and are special SLAs, service level agreements, negotiated for game services?
Nothing special, and we're using AWS. Amazon Web Services, which I assume you know, but in case you don't, yeah, AWS.
Let's see. Looking for the next. Here we go.
Hey, I see a boat in the game.
Hey. He's looking at Dion's screen over there. Dissy asks.
Hey, Dissy, saw you a few minutes ago in the alpha test.
Yeah. You have 10 classes per realm. If you have 8 in a group, there will always be some missing. This means some classes would need to be similar and take over the roles of others, ?
No. So look, people can make their 8-man or their 7-man or whatever, man. But we need something other than man. And saying 7-person just doesn't sound right. Back to where the brain was. Sorry, I'm I just see a boat. It's very nice. And the docks. Oh,
Dion's
see?
been working on that.
So excited. Because look, it's again, as I started this with, it's starting to look more like a game every week, and that makes me so very happy. Anyway, back to the whole class thing. So one of the things that we've shown so far, I think, with the design of our classes is that we're absolutely willing to go unique. The 8-man slot thing, in terms of, yes, we have to have one of each, class, or you have to get a couple of these classes. This is kind of different, right? When you look at Dark Age, or you look at games like WoW, there's a much more fixed rotation, and you want to have these people because, you know what you're facing every time. If you're doing the whole raid thing. Yes, we know the boss is going to spawn in exactly 32.56 seconds. You don't know that here. You're not going against all those kind of fixed targets. You don't know what you're going to experience out there. So, it's going to be up to you and, everyone else who's playing this game to figure that out. And that's going to be a lot more random. You never know what you're going to meet out there. So, do I think, oh boy, we have to make sure we have plenty of coverage, of the healer slot. So we have to have 3 or 4 classes, out of our 10 or 12 or 14, whatever ends up being, that have to be healers. I think the answer to that is no, but certainly as we get further, if, I should say, we get further out in terms of the number of the classes, pretty 90% sure that we will. Then there'll be some overlap, but it's not something we're really worried about right now.
Sai suggests, make the Broken Moon a map of the islands.
That'd be kind of cool. That's an interesting suggestion, actually. Don't know if it fits, but it's damn interesting.
Yeah.
And by the way, Dizzy, hey, thanks for posting on the forums as I asked. Appreciate it.
Justin asks, last tech question, I promise. What programming language is the CU engine coded in, and why did you choose it?
No, so, by the way, is this promise for the rest of eternity today? No, C#, C++ mostly. Back-end C#, front-end C++, with some other stuff thrown in, I believe, by Andrew.
Do you remember what question Adri asked that we were asked for clarification on? Clarification new tasks.
Yes, got it.
Okay, good.
So for Beta 1, yeah, in terms of new tasks, what I would certainly like to see, well, yeah, see, I remembered.
Yeah, see, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, you're younger than me, too.
That is bad.
So in terms of new tasks, certainly I would like to see, and I can't go into detail with this because I'm saving it for the private committee hearing. Sorry, I had to get it in. Stuff within sieges. At the end of the day, how our sieges end up being is so important to this game's success. It's not just about running around, in your group. It's, engaging even in other groups in open field battle. That's only one part of it. Sieges are going to be really important, and we certainly want to push that aspect of the game more and more as we move forward. So that's certainly a task that, if we have the time, I'd like to do even more in Beta 1 with. In terms of other tasks, I certainly would love to have caravans working in Beta 1, even though that wasn't promised at all. That would be great. I think that would be fun and useful. I would love to see a couple of other classes get in earlier than expected, but we'll see. But those would be some of the ones that immediately leaped to mind of things I would like to be able to tackle right after Beta 1. Besides the obvious, and this is like improving Cube, that to me is an old task, right now too old, but those would be, I think, some of the personal choices. It doesn't matter if that doesn't mean it's the right ones for the game, I just know from my own perspective, I'd like to tackle those.
Smackish asks, will we have a flare to shoot in the sky so if we need backup, live people can see it from far away?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there should be an ability like that, as well as something that the crafters make.
Zadrid asks, I've noticed the arrows fly a bit slow in game. Is the current speed of projectiles set the way it is for a particular reason?
Yeah, just for testing. Initially, they were a lot faster. I believe they move at 40 meters per second and goes to 70, which they used to be in. Yeah, they're going to move faster. Obviously, those arrows move so slow that I could probably dodge them. And you don't want that. I think there needs to be, and there will be, different kind of arrows and abilities made from your components that will affect the arrow speed. So, if you're going all Legolas on somebody, you want those arrows to move fast. Whereas if you are using them as siege projectiles, they should move more slowly. One, because they'll look cool, but more importantly, so the air system has a chance to react to them. Yeah, reasons.
M. Davis asks, is there a death penalty?
Oh yeah, there will be. There has to be. We've said that right from the beginning, even before the beginning, in the foundational principles. Death has to matter. We can't have a lot of, whack-a-mole type games. And if death doesn't matter, that's exactly what you have. Now, how much it will matter, that's what we have to figure out. Whether it will be a combination of a travel penalty or res sickness or all the sorts of things that we can use, we'll use some of them or all of them in different ways to make death have a sting. It has to. Anyone who believes in a great RVR game but says death should be meaningless in an RPG like ours. I mean, certainly you can argue that in some RVR style games that death shouldn't really matter, in the same way, but it has to matter for us. So yes, there will be a death penalty. There will be things that will happen to your character that, frankly, you're going to wish that didn't have to happen, but it's all part of it. Sieges have to matter. Taking the whatever has to matter, and if you can just pop right back up with no penalty, then it doesn't matter, and it would get boring as hell to play our game.
Odilvik asks, will players leave footprints, broken twigs, or crushed grasses that trackers can follow to locate enemies?
Yeah, we've talked about this. I'd love that. Question is, can we pull it off? There are things that you can do in terms of changing the terrain visually that don't cost you much. Question is, how much would it cost us? And we've talked about various ways to do it. Certainly it'd be easy if you were tracking, only one person. If you're playing in a game where, single player game where you have a limited number of NPCs out there. But in a game where you have our kind of load, having 3,000 people or 5,000 people or even 1,000 people changing the terrain by walking and then trying to track that would get really bad. Really, no good would come from that. But having a system where, you can track an individual, where, you might be able to, because you have their soul, do things like that, absolutely. Or part of that soul.
Homestar asks.
5-minute warning.
5-minute warning, folks. Homestar asks, any plans for an event or anything like the BSC week where a lot of new information and details are released to the public?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've told people, for at least 4 months, maybe a little longer, that as we get closer to beta, we want to talk about the things that we haven't talked about. I've been very clear on our reasoning. There is nothing good that would come from talking about these things too soon. Not in terms of, oh my God, players are going to panic. It's nothing like that. It's just, look, we have competition. We've got other people out there. We also don't want people to start the discussion of, oh, doom and gloom because you even announced this idea. No, just wait. Everything will be fine.
Sacrix asks, are you still going to have full friendly collision while in combat?
We'll have to see. I mean, look, that's what we want. We've said that from the beginning. Obviously, if we want to set up walls with people the right way, you have to have collision. But we'll see. That's something that is easily griefed, as you know, by people, either acting dumb on purpose or just being jerks. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Gucci for Coochie asks, are you worried about players using aimbot cheats because you are not using a tab targeting system?
Sure. You'll have to see how things work and decide whether what we're doing is going to help or hurt the aimbots. We'll see. Do I want aimbotting in our game? Of course not.
Justan asks, in your opinion, who is the biggest nerd in the office and why?
That's a really good question.
And Krakatoa says, there's so many types of nerds.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be able to name a few of them.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. I don't know if we've got an all-around nerd winner. I mean, it's so hard, right, to choose from because we have so many people interested in so many different things, and some may nerd out on Pokemon, and other people may, nerd out on RuneScape or WoW or, writing nerds or other nerds. So I wish I could answer that, but we're just such a group of interesting people, and this goes the same for Seattle, that I don't know who would actually win the title.
Well, we could win in categories. I mean, Ben's the biggest medieval combat realism nerd.
Oh, yeah, by far.
I'm the biggest writing nerd. I don't know who's the biggest Pokemon nerd, but it's a toss-up between Dave and Michelle.
I don't know if you're the biggest writing nerd. We'd have to compare how many books.
Word nerd.
Word nerd, yes, that you win. I was just meant. I don't know if you meant that in terms of actually writing or actually reading writers.
I guess I don't know for a fact.
Yeah, because you should see my book collection.
I guess so.
It was. I stopped buying things because I ran out of room. I bought a lot of books.
I'm probably the biggest board game nerd, but then Rob is the biggest competitive card game nerd by a long shot.
Yeah, he's really into that. He's really good. And yeah, board gaming, I think you've got that one. I'm not sure about anyone on Seattle, but you'd be tough to beat on that one, I think.
All right. Well, ready to close this down, or?
No, that's fine. One great question.
Right, let's see. One great question.
That one wouldn't have been a bad one, but since we couldn't give it a really good answer.
Yeah, that was my thought. But let's see. Well, I'm looking for a really good question that hopefully hasn't been asked before. Smackish asks, do you think the system build will be able to hold 1 million people in one place one day? Crazy question, but I thought I would ask.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So, no. Unless you mean by one day, way, but even then, it's more a question of, even if you could handle, from a back-end perspective, 1 million people in a small space, you couldn't display them. There'd be too much information. Forget whether the video card can handle that, because let's assume there's a time that it could. That's too much visual information for your brain to process. How would you distinguish a million players on any size, almost any size screen? On the other hand, how far can we go? I honestly don't know. We've gone pretty far already. I think we've gone a lot farther than anyone expected us to. The question is, how much further can we go? I know we can go further than what I think is optimal in terms of what's the best gameplay experience for somebody. Because one of the things, and this goes as well back to the body part system, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And while I have no doubt we could increase the number more than what we already have planned, the question is, should we? Is it fun? Large-scale battles, it's easy to say, hey, we want large-scale battles, and expect at a certain point that they are going to be, that they will still be fun. I think there's also a point where they're not fun anymore, and that's part of our challenge, and will be our challenge going forward, to see what that number is. So on a technical perspective, I think we can go much further than, or further than what we already have. Question is, how much further? Because at the end of the day, it will boil down to not only the fun, but even if you can make it fun, then that's still a lot of information being passed between the server and the client, and you run into things. And even if you have tons of servers all handling those people, you want to say instantaneously, but there's no way it can be instantaneous. It would be hard to scale the number up to something like 1 million. It gets, the more people you add, especially if you start adding them in separate servers, the more complicated it gets in communications and figuring out where everyone is and what they're doing, and all sorts of things. So it's a real technical hurdle, and it's easy to say that, and I could say that if we just wanted to have a system where people are chatting and you weren't seeing everyone, that you could do that and have almost, no reasonable limit. But for a game, and especially a game like ours, yeah, there's a limit. And it'll be, unfortunately, a lot less than 1 million, because that would be kind of cool. It just wouldn't work. So, yeah, hopefully that's a good answer.
All right. So we do our closing bits.
So, folks, like I said, now an hour and a half ago, we hopefully are going to have 3 tests this weekend. Hopefully 2, and possibly a 3rd. Be great if we have all 3. I'd definitely like to give the new code a little bit of a shakedown on Hatchery. But, I'll let you know in the update within an hour. Yeah, stay tuned. As far as I know, as of, again, when I sat down here, and Tyler hasn't been jumping up and down going, no, don't say that. I think that the last test we ran, probably while I was here, ran well. Certainly the test I was in right before I got here looked great. So, if that's still true, you'll see an email from us. So hopefully, again, 3 tests. Certainly 2 would be the minimum that I would call a successful weekend. One with a VFX test, and another one with building and crafting, and VFX as well. It's just not, that map hasn't been built out for VFX, but there's plenty of VFX running around, whether, you go to the main keep and you see the braziers, you see a statue with a VFX attached to, some VFX attached to it. Tyler's walking over.
Do you want any news, good or bad?
Yeah.
We put the art changes in, we were shooting arrows, and VFX were working, and something started to go south. We started seeing a delay on the network, and then right now nobody can get in, so Tim is looking at that with Mark. We're going to see what happens.
Okay.
And that was just in the last 20 minutes.
Okay. All right, so let me go and, see what else is going on, because that would suck. Is prep still good for the VFX?
Yeah, we looked at that. That was fine.
Okay. So, we're down to 2, and hopefully
2
we'll
tests,
figure 2
you mean.
tests. Hopefully a 3rd. I want to find out what happened here. We pushed some assets at the, don't want to say the 11th hour, but we pushed them late. We can always revert them out of it. We were hoping to have VFX attached to arrows, and that's who knows, that may have caused a problem. That's why we test. We'll let you know soon. So look, that's it. Yeah, great week, lots of progress, and have a great weekend. As always, we thank you for your support. We thank you for your patience, and I want to find out what happened in the last hour and a half.
All right, we'll see you later.
Bye.